hour. So yeah, welcome to the fifth webinar in our Wakefield Bounce Back Week series. The entire aim of the Bounce Back Week is to look at the how we can together as a community work as a team to create some real economic recovery in the region. As we know, it's been a really tough year for business and for individuals, and we know that disproportionately the effects have been seen in areas that don't typically have a lot of high net worth. In Wakefield, over all the events that we've already worked with all of the panelists that we have coming up, we really see that collaboration and community is at the very heart of an economic bounce back, an economic recovery, and people working together, helping each other out and sharing insight like we're doing today. Is the best way to move forwards. So for this event specifically, we're talking about access to finance. So, you know, we're going to be talking about everything from crowdfunding, pension funding, entrepreneur cash advances. We're thinking about angel investment, and we're just talking about finance in general, because it really is one of those things that's at the core of any business, isn't it? And it's one of those things that everyone seems to have the most concern about recently. So we have a really, really amazing lineup here for this panel. I'm really excited to introduce Helen Oldham from North Invest. Thomas is from Sanders Partnerships. We've got James Robinson here from Next Step Asset Finance, and we've got Vicky from Resolute Commercial Finance Limited. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each of our speakers today. They're going to give us 10 minutes on what they do, some practical advice, some interesting insight, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So by all means, everyone, please use that chat function, have chats between yourselves, and be really interested to hear how everyone feels about all of the conversations that are happening today. And if you do have any questions for any of the speakers, please wait until the Q&A session. That will be we'll have about 15-20 minutes at the end for all of your questions, and I'll pose them to the panel then. So without any further ado from me, Helen, I'm going to pass over to you. Please, if you can introduce yourself, North Invest, if people aren't already aware, I'm sure that a lot of people are, and what you're going to be speaking about today. Thanks.
So thanks so much, Georgia. I was super excited when Georgia asked me to take part in the event today, because I have a very special affection for Wakefield. I spent a number of years, I'm trying to think how many now, between 5 and 7, maybe 7 years, as the managing director of the Wakefield Express and the Pontefract Castleford Express and the South Ensel Express. I absolutely loved my time in Wakefield. And I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to talk about how we can support innovation in the Wakefield area and startups with that really essential sort of access to finance piece. I'm going to share my screen now. As everybody who's in the sort of pre-meet knows, a bit nervous about this because my Mac doesn't always behave, but it looks like we're going to be okay. Hang on a second. So yeah, hopefully you can all see that. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about North Invest and the role we play in the north of England. And I'm also, for those entrepreneurs of you out there, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you might do in preparation for having a conversation with an organisation like ours. So a bit of scene setting and then a bit of practical takeaways. Hopefully that's what everybody's expecting. So the most important part, I think, as a upfront piece is we are an early stage investment connector. We exist to make sure that the North achieves its potential in the tech startup space. The environment we work in shows that 75% of all funding actually goes to startups who are based in the Golden Triangle, which is London, the South East, Cambridge and Oxford. So we exist to sort of create a more level playing field in providing access to funding for northern-based startups. We really just have two criteria when you are approaching us. The first one is that you need to be based in the Northern Powerhouse region. So that is sort of anything from Derbyshire right up to the Scottish borders, and that you must be a tech-based business. We actually launched this business in 2015 when our founder, Professor Adam Beaumont, had a conversation with George Osborne about the lack of early stage funding across the whole of the North, and then became a sort of really properly operating thing in 2017, late 2017. As I came out of my job in media and set up a small team to start making those vital collections. We predominantly support very early stage tech. So an idea of what that might be like is we do support pre-revenue organizations. About 50% of the startups we talk to are pre-revenue. And typically an ask from a startup when they come towards North Invest is anything between 150 and 250k. We can do less, so we can do 50k. Is the smallest round we've done, and the largest round we've done is 1.8 million. Predominantly our model is based on having 150 angels in our network who we've recruited since 2018. They're based across the whole of the north of England. They're really keen to share their expertise, their knowledge, their connections, and their money with businesses like yours. So whilst we're predominantly about funding, we have also connected people who are mentors to startups, and we have helped with the appointment of non-exec directors and chair people as well across the startup community in the north. So that's a little bit about some of the background. We have had we had a slow ramp up in that 2018 we did 5 deals, and we were so excited about that. In 2019 we managed to double that and do 19 deals, and then last year we had the busiest, most successful year in supporting 20 rounds of funding throughout the year. What we're seeing at the moment is that there are no shortage of high quality startups coming forward for funding, and our investor base is also very keen to support startups at this difficult phase, this challenging phase as we come out of the pandemic. And they have been particularly good at supporting the pitch events that we've been running. So our model, people say to us, are you like Dragon's Den? We are a little bit, in that we have found that the best way to connect startups with investors is via a pitch event. Typically we hold those at least once a month, sometimes more. In fact, in May we had so many startups that we actually held 3 events. So there's a continuous opportunity to actually put yourself in front of that investor community, and we do that online. That's great because our investor base is based across the whole of the north of England, and it helps us to get the maximum number of people in front of the startups. So last year, in the rounds we were involved in, we raised over £9 million. We hosted 54 events, and they were things ranging from sort of startup boot camp events to scale up events as well. Because of our evolution, we are starting to see businesses coming through now for a second round, and we supported 3 second rounds in 2020, and we see that as a space that we're going to be increasingly active in. So either for a bridging round or a follow-on round, sort of pre-Series A. So Series A, for those people who are not sure what that means, is typically something that looks a bit more like 2 to 5 million in terms of an ask, sometimes a bit more in terms of supporting that next stage of development for a business. So we're supporting that very early stage right through to the Series A. So I thought I would share a few tips on a pitch deck for you. So for the entrepreneurs here, sometimes it's very good to know exactly what you need to do. On our website, when you register as an entrepreneur for funding, we ask you to supply your pitch deck and a very basic business plan. They don't need to be fully formed. They don't need to be super duper designed or whatever. That's just so that we can take a quick look at them. The pitch deck I'm going to talk about today is the version that you would actually use in a pitch. So you'll be talking to, typically at a North Invest event, about anything between 15 and 30 investors would turn up to a pitch event, and this is what they're looking for. So someone else wrote this, but I do agree. Investment, like dating, needs to tell a story, but don't tell everything. So investors really like it when you talk about purpose, why you came to this idea, and why it's important to you, and maybe your backstory as well, if that's relevant. It's important to have an emotional connection. It's more likely to be remembered, and typically you're more likely to find an investor who wants to work with you if you make some of it about an emotional connection. Be really honest about what you want in terms of funding, but you may also want expertise and connections or specific sector experience, and make sure you get feedback. So we do have some templates on the North Invest website, so I'm not expecting everybody to remember all of these things after my presentation, but typically this is what we would be looking in for an ideal pitch deck. Again, my team members are saying get it in shape and then trim it, like trimming your bonsai. So making sure it's succinct, don't have too many words on the page, and have a nice design as well. But your deck should take through what is the problem that you're trying to solve? How do you know it's a real problem? Can you prove that? What is your solution? Is it unique? How is it differentiated? The market size, what do you see as being the opportunity? How you're going to commercialize your product, which is a bit that people often don't spend enough time on. How can you prove you're going to get that traction in the market? What have you done already? Your routes to market, where you are currently on your journey, what you can see in terms of competition, whether that's nationally or globally. Globally is usually best. And your team, very important to talk about the expertise of the people that you have built around you. And typically in North Invest, we are looking for you to have a number of people involved in the business, so not just be a sole trader. Your financials, and then the ask, what your business is valued at, which you typically might need some support from an accountant. You know, how much you're looking for, what you're prepared to give away, a bit like Dragon's Den again. And then what are you going to spend the money on? You know, typically, what are you going to be able to leverage this money to be able to do that's going to make a difference and ensure that your investor gets a return on their investment? So that's kind of whistle-stop tour of all things pitch deck. Just some do's and don'ts. Do delegate the design of it. So I'd recommend that you use a professional to do that. Practice, practice, practice. The more times you do it, the more natural it will seem. It's great if you don't have to read notes. That does help. It's not essential, but it's helpful. Blimey. Do speak up. I think that's what that's saying. And do be sparkly and energetic. Make sure you evidence the customer's priorities that you're trying to attract, and justify your ask. Don't make up the figures. We've seen that. The investors always find out. Don't say that you've got traction, or you think you've got traction when you don't think you have. Again, it's better to be honest, and we can probably help you on how to prepare for some of these things and maybe go down a different route. Don't get defensive in the pitch event, and don't use poor quality graphics. So I think I'm about on time there with my time, George. I don't know whether you think I am or not, but that's it from North Invest. I think we're going to take some questions at the end. So waiting for Georgia to pop in now and say.
You've done very well with the time in there, Helen. Appreciate that.
That's okay.
Very precise. So thanks very much for the intro to North Invest. Obviously, you can go to the North Invest site for more information, or contact Helen. Feel free to add your contact details to the chat, Helen, if you to get in touch with you. Being from Leeds and being, having gone to a lot of different events, I know that North Invest is absolutely at the heart of the finance scene in the North. I'm really happy that we've had Helen involved here. I know that 10 minutes does not justify exactly what you guys do, and you've just scratched the surface there. I think that some of the stuff that you have mentioned, though, about being honest about what you want, is really important, and the fact that you guys aren't just supporting in terms of finance. There's also advice, there's resources. North Invest, if you go to the site, it's not just apply here for funding, there's a plethora of different resources for businesses as well. So it's really like a great business advice hub, as well as obviously that next step finance stuff as well. So thanks very much for your time, Helen. Helen's going to stay on the call until the end. If you have any questions for her, please add them to the chat function. So next up, we're going to have Thomas. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, what you guys do at the Sanders Partnership, and what you're going to present with us today. I just need you to come off mute, Thomas.
Lucky error there, really, wasn't it? Yeah, so yes, hi everyone, I'm Thomas Stupansky from the Sanders Partnership. We're accountants, tax and business advisors based in the centre of Wakefield. So just a little bit to get you started about just who I am briefly. So over 15 years plus experience in accountancy, 11 years plus experience in Xero, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, which we're certified on, Xero Champions, as well as using all other kinds of online software. I'm also treasurer for Wakefield BID, that's Wakefield Business Improvement District, and governor for Wakefield Adult Education Service. Finally, tend to specialise in digital and IT, automotive parts and e-commerce businesses, as well as any other kind of business really. So just to give you a bit of a background about finance from an accountant's perspective. So to go through that, the idea is that obviously finance can allow your business to grow without you having to put the money in necessarily, especially if you're a new business or you're looking to take the next step. It's very difficult to self-fund these things, particularly if you're looking to buy some key equipment or things like that. Then financing obviously gives you that option to grow that without having to put your own money in. And then hopefully it's congruous with what's in your business plan. So you should have an idea of what you want to do with your business and what you want to achieve. And then finance is what can help you put that in place to achieve what you want. Then it can also help save working capital in the business. As we all know, cash is king. So as long as you're not having to take all the cash out of your business to actually achieve what's in your business plan, then it's a much safer way to go. And as we all know, you can be the fastest growing business in the world, the most profitable one, but if you've not got cash, then you're not going to survive. So what should you consider? Well, it needs to match what you want to achieve, make sure it fits with your strategic objectives with the business. So if you're wanting to do one thing and then you're raising finance to do something entirely different, then it might not actually achieve what you want for your business. So you've just got to make sure it fits in with that. Make sure you understand what you're agreeing to as well. I think the most important thing is always speak to a finance professional. So obviously you've got some great people on here today who you can speak to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your business and you're getting the right agreement. So how does an accountant fit in, or how does the financials fit in? Well, I think with any kind of lending, you're always going to need up-to-date financial information. If you've not got up-to-date financial information, then it's going to be very difficult, particularly in this current state of affairs we're in. I don't think many lenders are going to accept some accounts that were submitted 7 months ago and were up to, say, September 2020. It's so much has changed in the last 15 months and continues to change that I think quite rightly a lot of lenders are worried about what they're lending to and how the business is changing, what kind of prospects it's got, and they just need to have the certainty of having up-to-date financial information. How COVID's affected the business, how will it affect it in the future? So you need to prove you can make enough money to repay what they're lending you. Ultimately, it's their money and they want to make sure that it's secure and going to the right place before they lend it. So how can you do that? How can you get that up-to-date financial information that they're looking for? Well, the easiest way to do it, as I know any business owner is extremely busy, extremely short of time, and everyone's looking to try and do things as quickly as possible. That's where we recommend programs like Xero, because it helps you get your up-to-date financial information as easily as possible. So anyone who's doing it is spending less time on the basic information entering and actually just be able to churn it through as easily as possible, log the bank transactions, use a program like Dex, which you can import all your purchase invoices into straight into programs like Xero. That's all going to help you produce up-to-date financial information, so you can use it to produce your profit and loss reports for lenders. You can use it to produce your balance sheets. You can do cash flow summaries. All this really useful information right in this one product that's going to be able to help get the information you need that lenders are going to ask for to show that you can borrow this money. And then on top of that, at the same time, it can actually help improve your cash flow as well. If you're doing your invoicing through programs like Xero, then you can send out your invoices through the software, can automate chasing that money up or bringing more cash in, which will show a much stronger financial position as well to then get more lending to. In addition to that, you can also integrate it in with other programs such as Futrli, Spotlight, Fathom. As you can see on the right hand side here, it produces a lot more visual data as well. So it can help you show how the business is doing, how you're performing. If you're going to have short-term cash flow issues, it'll highlight it here and then show you in advance, do you need to get funding for a particular period of time in the business? And then rather than seeing it from 1 month out, the 15 days out that you've got a cash flow issue, it will show you now, and you can do something about it 6 months in advance instead of 15 months or 15 days, where it's a lot more difficult to do that. It can also do cash flow forecasting, which you can adapt for, say, well, I think this debt is going to pay in 20 days instead of 30 days, so it's going to be quite granular, or you can make it as easy as possible, or to produce really easy cash flow forecasting you can produce to lenders then. And then you can do customized dashboards and reports tracking your business performance, which again just shows to lenders how on top of your financial information and how the business is performing you are. Again, which just gives them more and more confidence that you're a secure investment for them. So it's all about showing that their money is safe with you. Of course, you can do this online using programs like Xero, or we can help you with it. So we can produce that financial information you need, advise on how the best way to present it, make any tweaks that you need to make, because sometimes things like work in progress, prepayments, things like that might need adjusting in the software. Or maybe you just want some help getting set up with it. We can do training on how to use it so you can do it yourself, or we can just do everything for you. Then we can help and create the customized cash flow forecasts and reports that you can use to pass on to the lenders to help give you the best possible chance of getting what you want. So thanks for listening. I will share those contact details in the chat now. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Thomas. And you were actually a couple of minutes early, so I appreciate that. And also the fact that you are very sort of deeply involved within the fabric of Wakefield. You know, for your support to this event as well. Obviously, it has been the most volatile time ever, and I think that beforehand it may have been a little bit easier to say, here's some financials that are a few months old, but now it's like we need tomorrow's financials, and we just can't trust what's happened in the last few months, let alone in the last year. Great points on things like Xero, really, really good for startups, specifically to have top-down, bigger picture idea of your finances. I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done with my business without something like Xero. And there's things that I wouldn't do on my own, like a VAT return, ever would I try and figure that out. But there's things that I feel like as an entrepreneur and as a founder, you need to be so familiar. You need to be really, really, you know, your head in your numbers all the time. You cannot outsource things. You know, I don't even outsource bookkeeping because I want to know everything, and you know, some people don't want to have that granular level, but you really need to be. And having those other platforms, you know, that are interoperable with Xero, like HubDoc as well. You know, at the end of the quarter, when my accountant's like, where's your receipt for this sandwich that you had, and I'm just like, oh my god. And it was just a nightmare, but being able to have something that can interact with my Xero and I can reconcile stuff, it's just so much easier. And as you grow, you may be, looking to bring some into your team or outsource that more granular level of stuff. But those really are the building blocks, particularly for startups, aren't they, to have that level of insight that you can't live without. And as you say, it's the type of information that you need to take to someone like Helen and be like, look, we've got all these amazing charts and they're beautiful, and don't they show a great story, rather than just saying, finger in the air, we think this is going to happen. So really good to talk to you today, Thomas. I appreciate that. So James, you're up next. If you want to tell us what next step is, what you do, and what you're going to be talking about today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Georgia, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks to Helen and Thomas for setting the scene. I'm just going to give you a brief outline on what asset finance is. Some businesses don't know it exists and what it can do. So I just thought I'd take you through a whistle-stop tour through there. Hopefully. Everything's up and running. So, yeah, what is asset finance? Well, to start off with, asset finance creates positive outcomes. Everything that underpins asset finance is working towards a positive outcome, and I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail. That's where I get the biggest buzz from my job. I can see businesses going forward in a positive way on every single touch point that I'm working with them. So broadly speaking, what is it? It's something that is used, a finance facility that is used to finance new or used vehicles or equipment over an agreed period of time in return for regular payments. So as Thomas quite rightly said, instead of raiding your cash flow and paying a big lump sum out for a piece of equipment, it's a way of spreading smaller payments over a longer period of time and not raiding the cash flow and preserving it. It can be a massive wide range of assets from about £1,000 upwards. And I always try and get the point across by saying, if you can touch it in your business, there's a massive 99% chance that I'll be able to finance it for you. So it is really powerful. That's from IT equipment up to large manufacturing. Usually the period of time, the term that the finance agreement is over, is usually 2 to 5 years. That can change for certain assets, but generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, that's the term that lenders are looking to provide a facility over. In terms of what you can finance, new and used vehicles, as I've said before, new and used equipment and machinery. We also can do cars and vehicles for individuals, and also boats and planes. Now, boats and planes are a one for me that I've never touched before. It is something that that's on my bucket list. Might sound a little bit sad, a finance broker having a bucket list, but it's on there, definitely. That's on my to-do list, something that I'm looking forward to financing in the future. So, why would you finance? I'm quite a visual person, and the way I picture the cash flow of my business is this tank, the money flowing at the top with the revenue, and as you can see on this diagram, the costs flying out the bottom. But you wanting to keep that tank in a healthy level all the way through the year, whether that's as a current situation, but also you want it to look healthy in the future for your forecasts. So you've got that going along in one side of your business and you're managing that really well, but then there's something else you need an asset, whatever that is. It may be a vehicle, it may be a piece of equipment. And do you want to raid that cash flow by paying for that asset in one lump sum? And that's a question that some businesses ask themselves quite regularly. Some have a very healthy cash flow, and based on the size of the purchase they're looking to make, they can quite easily afford that. Some, it's a bit of a critical decision to make and they're not quite sure. So asset finance is a really good way of having that business critical asset you need, but not draining all that money out of your cash flow. And that's a really sort of powerful message to try and get across. If there's anything that you take away from today's session, that's the one. So come up with a few scenarios that I thought might be quite powerful in terms of getting the message across there. And I get quite a few inquiries, but people do say, oh, I'm a little bit old school, me. I save up and I only buy the assets that I can afford. And that's fair enough. That's people's perspectives and values, and I do sort of respect that. However, you've got to look at it from a different point of view. That the lists that are on here, for example, most assets are bought because they've got something that's old and unreliable, and it's costing them time and money and inconvenience. And in some cases, it could cost them a bit of reputation with customers if they can't deliver because that machinery or that asset is holding up the job. They may want to expand the current capacity. They may want to expand the production range. So yesterday I went to see a customer bought a large machine to expand what they actually do, their offering, their product offering. And some people just want to stay in front of their competitors. They want an asset that is more agile, has more functionality than their competitors, which they can use as a marketing tool, both for external marketing, but also to existing customers. That's all well and good, but if you do save up, that does delay. So, for example, I'm just looking, I've got a dream board on my wall here that you all can't see, and I've got my dream car on there. Now, the time, if I was to save up for that car, by the time I got that money, that probably won't be my dream car anymore. It may be obsolete, it may be not the new vehicle that I actually want. So in order to get that machine that you want, sometimes asset finance is a good way of getting in there, buying that machine, financing it over a longer period of time, and most importantly, as I said at the beginning, positive outcomes. Take advantage of the positive outcomes now. Get the machine that has got that functionality now, has got that improved efficiency and productivity, rather than waiting 2 or 3 years' time and then getting those positive outcomes. We also have a lot of customers who've got a yard full of assets, or a factory or premises full of assets. A lot of time, the way they deal with the assets when they're using the accounting function is that these assets are written off over time, and people don't see the value in them, but they are a store of value. So sometimes businesses need some money injected into them. They can use the assets that they currently own outright to release some cash back into the business, and that's something we call refinance. So it's not just the purchase of equipment and vehicles. Sometimes it's using the equipment and vehicles you've got to release cash to support the business. On occasions as well, I've come across a few customers who are much further on than they were 3 or 4 years ago when they took some agreements out, and they consolidate some of the more expensive agreements they had when they first started into one to reduce the monthly payments, again protecting the cash flow. So that's sometimes used quite often by customers. This is a customer of mine who needed to be compliant. Now this is quite an exciting piece of kit. This is a dual view cabbed dumper truck. So instead of it being the old-fashioned dumper truck where the member of staff would sit on there and they're exposed to the elements, and if the dumper truck fell over, they could be in harm. This is a dumper truck where the person who's driving it is safe, and also the cab rotates through 180 degrees so that they don't have the risk associated with looking over the bucket when it's full. Now, a lot of house builders are wanting these type of dumper trucks on site because they are better health and safety wise. Now, in order for customers to be able to tender, they might need those dumper trucks in order to fulfill the criteria for the contract. I have a customer who bought 6 of these in order to do that, which has allowed them to go onto very lucrative and larger contracts. Just to give a quick idea, a typical restaurant scene that hopefully we'll all see more of it in the next few months. Fingers crossed everything goes back to normal. And I've just circled things in there that can be financed. The air extraction system, the lighting, the coffee machines, the tables, the chairs, all the kitchen equipment, all that can be financed on an asset finance agreement. And in an office environment, again, the fire systems, the audio visual, all the IT, all that can be financed as well. And then on a more industrial setting, if you were to find yourself taking on some premises like this, you may need things like mezzanine floors, LED, energy efficient lighting, all the safety features like the fire alarm, CCTV, all that can be put onto an agreement, as well as the stuff that you're going to put in there, like your machinery and your forklifts and all that sort of stuff. Some customers hire equipment a lot, and just to fly through this one quite quickly, customer here was hiring a similar vehicle to this at £700 a week. Over 2 years, you can see that's a whopping £72,800. If they put that on a finance agreement, which they did, that worked out at £287 per week and 29,800 over that 2 years. So a massive saving. And then after the 2 years, they owned the vehicle, so they'd only got the servicing and maintenance costs to pay. So massive saving there. Quite controversially, some people want to get rid of some staff. And this machine that I financed quite a few years ago did that. It replaced 4 members of staff with a saving of £1,000 per month, the finance agreement versus the wages. And also it was 10 times more productive, which allowed the customer to go for bigger contracts and also buy raw materials in bulk cheaper, so it saved them money on their costs as well. Final slide from me, is it flexible? Asset finance is very flexible, so we can defer the VAT to a time within 3 months that fits in with your VAT quarter, so that you're not too exposed if it's a large VAT payment going out. If you're a seasonal business, so whether you're quiet in the winter, quiet in the summer, payments can be altered to suit that, so that you're not draining cash flow at a time when you're quiet and you're quite sensitive. You can do accelerated payments where you make larger payments up front to reduce payments across the rest of the term. And unlike a domestic mortgage, there are no early settlement fees. There are no extra penalty costs to finishing an agreement early. If you want to settle it early, you just pay it off based on the figure that the lender creates as a settlement figure. And fingers crossed, usually it can be completed within just a few days, so it is quite slick and quite smooth. So if anybody wants to have any further chats about anything that I've covered, please do contact me via the website. It's James from Next Step Asset Finance. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, James. It's not something that I personally have known that much about. I think being a service company, you don't really think about actually having any physical assets, but you know, we've got 10 MacBook Airs on the books, so that's one thing for a start, isn't it? Yeah, really interesting. And yeah, I was wondering about the flexibility of it as well, because thinking about those guys who were hiring, it was like, were they hiring every single week though? Was it to do with demand? Was it to do with seasonality? So it's really interesting that you brought that up, that there is a little bit of movement in terms of the allowing for particularly like scale ups to be quite agile in the way that they're working with their finance. So that's really interesting. Vicky, we're going to come to you next. If you want to give us an intro to yourself and what you're going to be speaking about today.
Yeah, okay, I'll just try and share my screen. Right, everybody see that, yeah? Okay, so yeah, I'm Vicky Walker, and I'm the founder of Resolute Commercial Finance. I'm a commercial finance broker working with businesses to secure the finance they need to take the business forward. I've got 20 years experience in the financial services sector. I've worked for a couple of well-known invoice finance lenders, and I've been self-employed as a broker for the last 4 years. I'm FCA and NACFAB registered, so that's National Association of Commercial Finance Brokers. So everything that we do, you know, it's all about the right thing for the client, basically. And I'm based on the outskirts of Wakefield. So I put together some slides, really. I mean, I didn't really know who the audience might be and what sort of things you might be interested in. So what I've done is I've just sort of put an overview together of the different types of finance that is available. I'm obviously not going to go into in massive detail because there is quite a lot. So obviously you've got the startup loans for businesses, you know, anywhere up to 2 years old. These are government-backed loans, generally to the directors rather than to the business itself. But the beneficial in that it's 6% interest rate with no arrangement fees. So that's probably the cheapest kind of money that you're going to get for a startup business. There's a number of different sort of lender partners that facilitate these loans. So I get inquiries about these all the time. I don't get too involved with them because obviously being self-employed, my time's not free, but the lender partners do work with you to help you do the business plans and the projections that they need to take the application forward. So there's no point paying a broker to do what somebody's there to do for free for you, basically. Then we've got obviously business loans, so those can be either secured or unsecured. Secured being generally via property, sometimes via asset or potentially even stock. Reasons for taking business loans obviously is for working capital purposes, improve cash flow, or if your business is looking to grow. There's more sort of specific business loans available. So for example, if you've got a VAT bill or a tax bill, you can get loans over a specific purpose to help you to repay those liabilities. So obviously you can get business loans up to terms anything up to 5 years, but if you're paying a VAT bill, you wouldn't want to take a VAT liability over 5 years. So the way that they work is they spread the VAT bill over 3 months. So the bill split into 3 equal payments. At the end of the 3 months, probably the time that your next quarter's due, you might be okay to make that payment, or they can roll the facility on to help you with your next VAT bill. So there's a lot of lenders out there that are trying to tweak things to make it very specific to fill all needs, basically. Then you've got invoice finance. So obviously, if you're a business that's selling business to business and you've got a sales ledger, this helps to improve the cash flow into the business. So if you take a recruitment company as an example, they raise an invoice to their company, the customer, it might take 60 days to pay, but they've got all their temporary wages to pay on a Friday each week. So if they're waiting for their customer to pay on 60 days, how do they meet that wage bill? So by invoice finance, you get funding from the invoice on day one, generally up to anything up to 90%, depending on the sector. You've got revolving credit facilities, which essentially is just a big overdraft, probably more than what you would get from a high street bank. So lenders will take into account what the assets of the business, so your ledger, plant machinery, if there's any property there, if there's any stock, and they'll basically grant you an overdraft limit. So you just pay for the money that you draw down. You've got merchant cash advances. Now, this is a good form of finance for businesses in retail, so hospitality, so anybody that's taking payments by credit card, basically. So what the lenders will do is they'll generally advance you an amount up to the equivalent of 1 month's card takings. And then the repayment is every time you take a card payment, they deduct a percentage from that card payment, and that's what repays the loan. So if you've got a quiet month where you've not so many customers, obviously you're not paying as much back on the loan, but your busy periods, you're paying more back on the loan because it's a percentage of each card payment. You've got trade and supplier finance. That helps people that are importing goods from overseas, for example, and might need assistance before they can get to raising an invoice. So they need the cash before they can generate the sale. So you've got lenders that will help you that pay the suppliers. Now, generally, they want confirmed orders on any sort of stock or supplies that they're helping to fund. Asset finance, obviously, James has touched on that. And then you've got crowdfunding and investment. Helen's obviously, sort of touched on that. And then you've got commercial mortgages. Now, this can be for trading premises for your business. So if you're wanting to stop renting and have your own premises, you can get commercial mortgages for that, or equally, you might want to buy a commercial property and rent that out to other businesses. So I've put together a bit of a list of the information that lenders will want to see when they're looking at an application. You'll be surprised how many people come to me for finance and they don't have any of this information available and don't often understand why it's required. So most lenders will want to see an asset and liability statement, and that always causes concerns with business going, well, why do they want to know what I own? Well, basically, it's that provides the strength in your personal guarantee. So most finance these days, even though it's to a limited company, they will require directors' guarantees. So obviously, if you're a homeowner, that adds strength to the application. So in most cases, there'll be an application form of some sorts, whether it's a formal form or you pitch, or like for me, for example, I would write a paper to the lender, basically outlining the purpose of the loan, how much the business is applying for, and what period they want to take it over. Obviously, that needs to include background to the business, directors' experience, what they've done before. Some applications you would need a business plan. Now, that is probably more to do with startup businesses where there isn't the historic information for lenders to base decisions on. Most lenders will want to see about 6 months bank statements. And the reason they obviously look at these is to make sure that you can operate your bank account within its parameters. So they'll be looking for any unauthorised overdraft positions. If there's obviously repeat bank charges on there, that's a cause for concern. They'll also be looking at if you're making direct debit payments SIFT for other lenders. That shows that there's other finance there within the business. So maybe if you've not disclosed that and they see something on the bank statement, that will be cause for concern. And I guess other little things were just be mindful of what goes out of your business bank account, because if there's a lot of direct debits there to Paddy Power or Betfred, then it might just show that you're not actually in control of your spending and you're a bit of a risk. So financial accounts, obviously Tom touched on this. Lenders will always want to see the financial accounts for your business. Now, in a lot of cases, they're historic, they're out of date, and certainly with everything that's been going on with COVID, lenders have been wanting management account right up to pretty much current time to see how the business has performed during COVID. If there isn't the information, so if profit has dropped, for example, and maybe the affordability can't be demonstrated by historic accounts, then it's an idea to have some projections to show that, yeah, we've taken a bit of a hit in COVID. Things are starting to turn around now. We will be able to afford this loan going forward. We need to, to see that in some forecasts. VAT returns are sometimes quite an alternative really to the management account. So basically that's just confirming that your turnover levels and your purchasing levels have remained sort of constant. As Tom also mentioned, that lenders are asking how COVID has impacted the business. So businesses have not, they've not necessarily been impacted negatively. Some have been actually positively impacted. But if your turnover and profit has massively increased because you've been selling PPE, for example, is that profit sustainable? So if you're maxing out on a loan, which requires that level of profit to service it, but if your turnover then is going to sort of level off or decline once we get out of this mess, if we ever do, then obviously you just sort of need to be mindful of that really. And then ID, obviously proof of address for directors so that lenders can and brokers can undertake their anti-money laundering checks. And then the sort of final point is a personal credit report. Now, lenders won't ask for a personal credit report, but they will undertake searches. So you can go through preparing all of this information, but if there's something in your personal credit report that you weren't aware of, a CCJ that you didn't know you had, that could potentially blow your application out of the water. So it's always a good idea to run your own personal credit report first, just to make sure that there's nothing on there that could cause concern. And then I've just put together just a few snippets really as to how COVID has impacted on the lender market. So obviously for a lot of businesses, trading performance has been affected. In some cases it's been negative, in some cases it's been positive. So we're finding that it's quite a challenge now to demonstrate the affordability. So for example, people come with for commercial mortgages, lenders generally want to see affordability over the last 2 to 3 years. If the business has suffered this last 12 months, we're seeing a lot that it's knocked out the debt service cover. The other thing obviously is businesses that have already taken bounce back loans and CBILS loans, lenders will take those repayments into account. And that again could make it more difficult for you to borrow further, say for a commercial mortgage. Certainly with the banks, they're looking for like 2 times cover. So they'd look at what your loan repayment is on a commercial mortgage, plus your bounce back loan repayment. And then they want to see twice that in profit. So a lot of businesses that have taken these loans, and quite a few I think have thought, oh, well, I'll use my bounce back loan for a deposit. It's not always that straightforward. And in a lot of cases, it has made it more difficult for them to borrow for more, sort of growth purposes later on. Obviously, we've seen a lot of businesses that have been positively impacted by all of this, but because of the lender market and the CBILS loans, there were a lot of lenders that just pulled out of the market altogether. They were only doing CBILS lending, and of course, if your business couldn't demonstrate that it had been impacted by COVID, it has made it difficult for just a normal business to just get a normal unsecured loan for growth. The banks have seen obviously an increase in fraud with people opening bank accounts to obtain bounce back loans. So for new businesses now, it's more of a struggle to open a bank account, certainly with a high street. Obviously, you know, there's the online options available, but people do still like a relationship manager and do still want to go to the traditional high street. So that has been a bit of a problem. And again, banks only wanting to lend to their own customers. So again, that's just made it a lot more difficult to access funding elsewhere. And certainly, if somebody's got a bank account with Tide or Starling that wants a commercial mortgage, there was a period where banks wouldn't even look at it. It is starting to open up a bit more now, but yeah, it has been tough. So why you should use a broker? Obviously, you don't have to use a broker. If you take that list of information, you could quite easily package up an application yourself. But obviously, a broker will have access to a wider range of lenders and products without having to do the research. They've already done the research, so they already know what's out there. So it saves the business time, basically sorting the right finance and knowing that it's the right finance for them. So a broker will help you package your application, and so they try and secure a best outcome with the lenders, and advising you basically on what's the best solution for your business. So it's always a good idea to sort of ask a broker what other options they've considered and why those might not be suitable for you. I wouldn't be alarmed either if a broker's wanting to charge a fee. Obviously, we're all in business to make a living. A broker's no different to that. If brokers are not charging you a fee, I guess you've got to ask them, where are they getting their income from? You as a customer, as a business, want to know that your broker's giving you the right advice and they're not just placing you with a lender that's giving them the most commission. So choosing a broker that's registered with the FCA, that's registered with NACFAB, they've got compliance to adhere to, so they have to disclose any commissions payable. So you just want to understand that they are providing you with the best service and putting you in touch with the right lender. A decent broker as well will have contacts in other areas of the business. So me specifically, I don't do asset finance. If someone comes to me for asset finance, I'll point them in James's direction or somebody else. If somebody comes up to me with a startup, I would refer them into someone like Helen, who's more experienced in that sector. She's got the expertise, I haven't. And then a good broker will obviously work alongside your other advisors. So you can work with your accountant to get all the information needed to put your application together. But most importantly, they're working for you and not the lender. So, just make sure that you know that you're getting, that they're giving you the right advice, basically. And that's it for me. So I've probably just waffled through that, and I don't think it's taken 10 minutes, but I hope it was useful.
Thanks, Vicky. No, super, just practical advice there, and loads of different things that I was completely, as a business owner, unaware of the different things like the VAT bill, financing. I think that I remember when we first went into lockdown, a lot of the small business advice was really around kind of being really scrupulous about sort of what's happening tomorrow, what's happening next month. Make sure that you have literally a day-by-day cash flow, spreadsheets and stuff like that. So I think that VAT bill thing would have been quite interesting to those people sort of working day by day. And then the card payment thing as well. That's really good for the likes of hairdressers, nail technicians.
Yeah, restaurants, yeah.
Who've obviously seen such a massive impact on their businesses. And it just, every time it comes off the payment, I mean, what they could do is just put the price up a £5 for it, your hair.
Yeah. I think my hairdresser has done.
I wouldn't be, if my hairdresser said to me, it's going to be an extra £5 this time, I would say, well done for you for putting it up.
I wish it were only a £5. I think I were out last time I went
in. Do you want to stop sharing your screen, Vicky?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So if anyone has any specific questions for any of the panelists, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat function. Helen, I wanted to know, you've done your 20 deals in this last year, which has been absolutely amazing. And I wondered, are these startups, are they people who had already started COVID, or are they ones that we're seeing or we're reading about this economic boom of the homepreneurs, of people starting, either being made redundant or have been furloughed and are starting up these businesses from home?
So I don't have any specific data on that, Georgia, but my general experience is that in 2020, we were seeing businesses that had already started pre-COVID and had already built up some momentum in those businesses. And we're using that opportunity of possibly having a bit more time to put together their application for funding. What we're seeing now, though, are more businesses who are coming out of various government schemes that are encouraging entrepreneurs. So there's quite a few access to finance type programs that you can enlist on now. We're involved with one with Winning Pitch, which is encouraging, I think, more startups to take that leap. So we've seen people who are doing sort of side hustle stuff starting to move into taking the risk of making that a full-time thing, and some people who, for various reasons, their previous employment has ended, or they're young and they haven't actually set out on a structured career yet, thinking, yes, we'll start a business. I actually think the environment for startups at the moment is pretty strong.
Yeah, and I mean, Thomas, you were next on the list, so I wondered, did you have you seen that there's been very many startups that have come to you for advice recently that have come out of the pandemic?
Definitely. I think there's definitely a degree of people who are thinking that this has been a good opportunity to take a step back from what they're doing in their kind of normal work life and think maybe this is an opportunity to do something different, to actually build something that they can call their own, rather than just going to work, working for someone else and then going home at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I wonder, this, people are talking about, okay, there's been this huge boom in new entrepreneurs, and there is the skepticism that in the next couple of years, they say 1 in 10 businesses only last the first year. This is that skepticism that people are that we're going to put ourselves into another recession, because actually people have put finance against their homes, or they've built their home office or their shed office or that kind of stuff against their homes, and actually those businesses potentially won't work out. I wonder if you had any advice for those people who have started, and how to just sort of make sure that they're as agile and as refined as possible in their first year in terms of keeping on top of their finances.
I would say try and automate it as much as possible. So using these things, these packages, to save you time. As a startup business, you've got so much on your plate that actually you need to be spending as little time as possible doing the groundwork, that that you're not generating value in your business. You need to be generating as much value on your business and working on your business as possible, and not doing basic data entry.
Yeah, for sure. And James, I wondered from you as well, do you find that people see the asset finance is a little bit more risky, and what are sort of main pain points that people would say, oh no, I think that's a little bit too risky, and how do you think that you would combat that, especially for people just going into business?
It often depends on why they've come to me in the first place. Sometimes, well, more often than not, it's a replacement asset anyway, so it's to get rid of an old unreliable piece of equipment and replace it with a newer piece. But with new start businesses, there tends to be, from the ones I've come across, the kit tends to be business critical. So it does tend to be the main foundation of the business or the main output. So it is essential. So in terms of risk, they know they need it to fulfill the service or the product that they're wanting to offer. So there's not as much risk attributed to it by the customer at that point.
Yeah. And I guess there's sort of a fixed value to a lot of the assets that people are using anyway. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop us, because I've realised that we've just got to 1:30 already. A few little bits. We do have another webinar this afternoon, Business and Wellbeing. We've got Geordie Hill from Thrive Law, and we've got Susan Kohler-Shaw from SJC Yoga. Tomorrow we've got some inspirational growth stories, and then we also have an employability, upskilling and retraining session in the afternoon. And then Friday morning we've got equality and diversity, an event whose guest speaker lineup has just been announced today. So please come to the Wakefield Bounce Back Week website, check out all those other events that we have coming up, and we'll hopefully see you again sometime this week. Thanks so much to the panel today, to Helen, Thomas, James and Vicky. Really appreciate your time. I wish that we could have spoken for longer. And thanks to everyone who, Andy's asked a question there, maybe we can come back to you on email with that, Andy. Sorry, we wouldn't have the time to go through that. Thanks to everyone who came, and have a great day.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.